Hello and welcome back for another historic video. Today we'll be taking a look at this Merfolk Tribal Best of 3 deck. At 1 mana, we have Merfolk Windrobber. This flying creature mills your opponent for a card every time it deals combat damage, and then additionally we can sacrifice it to draw a card if the opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard. We also have Mistcloaked Herald, a 1/1 Merfolk that can't be blocked. So when this gets pumped up by our lords, it's able to continue pushing combat damage through any blockers. And then we have 4 copies of Shoreline Scout, and when this 1/1 Merfolk comes into play, we may exile a Merfolk or land card from our hand and conjure a tropical island. This is very versatile, as if we have some lands that we don't want, we can pretty much upgrade any of them, making them slightly better than their original version. Or if we are a bit light on lands and we need some to continue to play out cards on curve, we can always transform one of our less useful Merfolk cards or duplicates into the tropical island. Then at 2 mana, we have a bunch of lords. First is the Vodalian Hexcatcher. This 1/1 Merfolk has flash, so you can play it on your opponent's turn, and then additionally you can sacrifice a Merfolk to counter target non-creature spell unless its controller pays 1. This ability is able to single-handedly shut down many non-creature strategies, especially if the cards that they're trying to play are costly, because they have to essentially hold up an extra mana for each Merfolk that we have in play before attempting their combo. Another lord that we have is Master of the Pearl Trident. This lord also grants our creatures island walk if our opponent controls an island, meaning that they cannot be blocked. Merfolk Trickster is not a lord, but it does have flash, so we can play it on our opponent's turn, and when it enters, we're able to tap target creature an opponent controls, and it loses all abilities until end of turn. So this is a good way to get an opponent's trump blocker out of the way for a turn, or in some scenarios, we can also use it strategically to strip one of our opponent's creatures of its abilities as a tempo play. And then the last 2-drop lord that we have is Merfolk Mistbinder, and this one doesn't have any additional abilities outside of granting Merfolk +1/+1. At 3 mana, we have our last lord in the deck, Merrow Reejerey, and this Merfolk also allows you to tap or untap target permanent whenever we cast a Merfolk spell. Notably, we're able to tap and untap lands as well, so all of our 1-drops are essentially free with this card, as we can just untap the land used to cast it. Then we can use its ability to tap down our opponent's trump blockers or tap down their lands so they're not able to use any combat tricks. And playing out multiple Merfolk in one turn just increases the power of this ability. Our last 3-drop Merfolk is Svelin of the Sea and Sky. This is a legendary 3/4 creature, and as long as we control at least 2 other Merfolk, it has indestructible. Additionally, whenever it attacks, we get to draw a card, and it also grants our other Merfolk Ward 1, meaning if they're targeted, our opponent needs to pay an additional mana, otherwise the spell is countered. As a curve topper, we're running 4 copies of Collected Company. This 4-mana instant lets us look at the top 6 cards of our library, and we can put up to 2 creature cards with mana value 3 or less from among them onto the battlefield, which is any creature in our deck, as they're all mana value 3 or less. This is a great combat trick, as we can pump up our team significantly with all of the lords that we have, dealing additional surprise damage. It could also be used to generate some surprised blockers if our opponent attacks in haphazardly with some of their key creatures that we want to block and remove. For the mana base, we are playing 3 basic island, 4 breeding pool, which we don't mind upgrading to tropical islands, 4 hinterland harbor, we also don't mind upgrading, 4 cavern of soul, which are excellent against control decks to make our Merfolk uncounterable, 2 Mutavault, which for 1 mana we can transform into a 2/2 creature with all creature types, meaning it will receive the buff from our lords. And then we have 3 copies each of Secluded Courtyard and Unclaimed Territory. Both of these cards let us name a creature type when they enter the battlefield, and then they can add 1 mana of any color to cast that creature type. Notably, both of these lands also can tap for a generic mana, which help us cast our collected company on curve as well. When it comes to the sideboard, we have 2 copies of Mistcaller. This 1 mana 1/1 creature allows us to sacrifice it, and then until the end of turn, if a non-token creature would enter and it wasn't cast, we get to exile it instead. So this is a form of graveyard hate for us. It can also stop things like opposing players, collected companies. 2 copies of Spell Pierce as cheap interaction for non-creature cards. 2 copies of Nature's Claim to deal with opposing artifacts and enchantments. 3 copies of Test of Talents, which is a 2 mana instant that counters instant and sorcery spells. And we're able to search our opponent's graveyard, hand, and library for cards with the same name and exile them. This is useful against combo decks to rip out all of their combo pieces, and can also be used to take out opponents' removal from their deck as well, which can make it significantly harder for them to deal with our creatures later in the game. We have 2 copies of Heroic Intervention. This 2 mana instant gives all of our permanents hexproof and indestructible. Useful against board wipes, and can also be used just to protect our creatures in a key situation. One of the combat tricks we can use with this is if our opponent is swinging out with a dominant attack, we can give all of our creatures indestructible and chump block, and then potentially have a lethal attack on the swing back. 2 copies of Brazen Borrower, which we can use the Petty Theft as a tempo play or to remove a lock piece temporarily from the board. And then it can also be flashed in as a 3/1 flying creature for a little bit of evasive damage if we need to deal those last few points of life. And lastly, we have 2 copies of Tishana's Tidebinder. This 3 mana flash creature is able to counter activated or triggered abilities, and then if an ability is countered this way, that permanent loses that ability for as long as the Tidebinder remains on the battlefield. We'll usually be looking to bring this in only against opponents that are using a ability multiple times from the same card, but potentially it could be brought in just for a single use ability as well if we deem it to be powerful enough. Before we jump into the gameplay, I'd like to ask you to please like and subscribe the video. It really helps the channel. And without further ado, let's jump into the games. We have won the die roll. We'll play first. This hand is okay. We'll give it a keep. We'll lead on our basic island, and then we'll turn our hinterland harbor into a tropical island. Up against an aggro deck from our opponent, and the Mistbinder is a good top deck. Get in a little bit extra damage on this attack. We should be in a pretty good position to race our opponent. No block. They don't appear to have a pump spell here, and they do not play out a follow-up. So we'll pump the team, hit for 7. We have lethal on board with our lords. Right, and we took the first game. Against this deck, our opponent could have some removal, could have some pump spells as well. I think we'll shave one of the legendary creatures. We already have the Hexcatcher to deal with some instants and sorceries. Trickster can tap down their creatures before they attack. I think we'll shave a couple of the flyers here. Bring in 1 Brazen Borrower, 1 Tidebinder, and 1 Test of Talents. We can adjust our plan after game 2 if we need to. Here we have a very top-end heavy hand. We only have one card that is currently playable with our mana. We do get 3 draw steps before we're in trouble. We'll keep this. Turn 2, we can either use the Trickster as a combat trick, or we can tap down our opponent's Hellhound. Raisin Bar is also good. We can bounce it if needed for a tempo play. Should help bridge us into the mid game. So we'll play out our island and pass. We've got Hobgoblin Captain and a fetch land. We'll just bounce their Hellhound back to hand. We'll get our Mutavault down, and then we can lead with our Svelin. And next turn, if we play Collected Company, it will likely gain Indestructible. Be a great blocker for our opponent's deck. They replay the Hellhound and only have green mana showing. They have no good attacks here. So we'll play out our Cavern on Merfolk and pass the turn. Okay. They give their Hobgoblin Captain first strike. And here I think we take out the Mammoth. We'll see if they use a pump spell, and then we can use our Collected Company. They do pump it up. Did they use another one? No. And we only hit a single creature. That is unfortunate. The odds of that happening are pretty much 0. We can untap one of our islands here. Play out the Mistbinder, untap another land. And then play out our Scout. And here we can tap down our opponent's Mammoth, I guess. We won't take a land, we tack in, and our opponent just concedes. We take match 1. Match 2, we have won the die roll. We'll play first. This is a good mix. We'll keep it. We'll play out our Cavern on Merfolk, and then I think we turn one of our Svelin into a tropical island since it is a legendary creature. Hit for 2. Oh, and I thought this was the flash one. That was my fault. I should have played out Master first. We missed 1 point of damage, and it'll snowball throughout the game as well, so that might cost us. So here we will play out the Wind Robber and Master of the Pearl Trident. We already missed out on at least 2 damage here. We'll get rid of the lands. Now we'll play out our Svelin. And we'll attack in the air. Our opponent does appear to be on a zombie deck. We have a good block here, so we'll take it. Here we can attack with our Flyer and our Svelin, draw a card. We'll play out our Reejerey. And then I think we hold on to Shoreline Scout to try and tap down our opponent's blockers next turn. This also plays around a board wipe. So they have 3 blockers here. We can tap down 2 of them. So the 2 that we tap down are the ones that we want to be remaining. I think we want to leave the Colossus alive and our opponent just concedes. Alright, against a creature-based zombie deck, we'll bring in the Mistcallers in case they have some reanimation aspects. And then we can cut the Wind Robber, which will fuel their cards. We could always bring in Heroic Intervention if we think they have a board wipe. Brazen Borrower could get rid of a blocker. Didn't see many abilities for Tidebinder. I think we'll try this in game 2. And if we need to, we can bring in the Intervention and potentially some counter magic, depending on how our opponent boards. This hand is good. We'll keep it. We'll need Merfolk, and then with the Shoreline Scout, we'll turn one of these harbors into a tropical island. That will allow the second one to come into play untapped. We'll offer up the trade. Our opponent just takes it. So here we will play out the Mistcaller. And then we can turn our Secluded Courtyard into a tropical island as well. Our opponent appears to have disconnected. Swing for 8. Next turn, we can tap down 2 of our opponent's blockers if they come back. We are now 2-0, going into match 3. We have won another die roll. We'll play first. This hand could be a bit slow. It does have the 4 lands for Collected Company. Hopefully we're not up against an aggro strategy. We'll try it. Name Merfolk. Then we'll turn one of the unclaimed territory into a tropical island. Pass the turn. Idol of the False Gods here from an Eldrazi deck. I'll hit for 2. So this will be some ramp for our opponent. And they do have the Fleshraker. Here we can either play out Svelin or Merfolk Mistbinder. We'll try Svelin. Our opponent does have exile-based removal, and we will offer the trade for Fleshraker. They're not likely to take it. Fleshraker is just so much more powerful in this matchup. Thief of Existence won't hit anything. It is a 3/4 body. Do they also have a burn spell? Warping Whale. We have flooded a little bit with our land draws after keeping a land heavy hand. I think we attack in with everything, hoping to hit a couple lords off of the collected company. We draw another land. Opponent chumps. So we'll take the Master of the Pearl, and we already have a Svelin, so Mistcloaked Herald it is. Next turn we only have a Mistbinder, so we would like to draw another Merfolk off the top of the deck. Our opponent was 1 mana short of kicking their Mycospawn, and they go for a forest instead of an Eldrazi temple. Unfortunately, we draw yet another land, so I think this one we don't have a chance anymore. We'll play out our island in case we draw into a flash creature with Svelin. Another land. So a bit of bad luck here. This was already going to be a very tough matchup. Eldrazi is easily the best deck in best of 3. And I think I'm comfortable conceding here. So not many of our cards are going to be super useful. We'll bring in the Tidebinder. Brazen Borrower is only a temporary solution. We can bring in our Nature's Claim. So flying is good. We can shave one of the scouts, one of the Svelins, and then possibly some of the tricksters. And we'll try running this. We'll play first. This hand is okay. We'll shock in the breeding pool in case our opponent has a turn 1 enchantment. They do not this game. So we'll play out our master. No fast lands from our opponent yet, so we might actually stand a chance in winning this one. Notably, we're not running Consigned to Memory in our sideboard, which is the most powerful interaction against the Eldrazi deck. Our opponent with a tempo play. We'll run it back. Missing land drops is also problematic because now if they bounce all of our Merfolk, we will have trouble playing them back out. So our 1-drops are essentially free to play here. And then we'll tap down their Fleshraker. Down to 6, trying to dodge a 7-drop. The Evoked Null Drifter still counts, and so that would bounce all of our creatures. And we're able to take game 2 on to game 3. Even though we have seen the bounce spell, I don't know if we want to bring in counter magic like Test of Talents or Spell Pierce. We do have the Hexcatcher if we need to counter something. So I think we're going to run it back with our game 2 sideboarding plan. 0-lander, this has to be a mulligan. And only 1 land here. I don't think we can keep this either. We might have to. If we go down to 5, our chances of winning diminishes significantly. Really looking to hit our land drop next turn. That counts. Then I think we get rid of one of our duplicates. Play out the other Wind Robber. Now we can at least pressure our opponent in the air. They've done a good job getting their Flesh Strike Gear out on curve. We'll swing with everything, see if they block. We can surprise them with the Hexcatcher. They don't fall for it. So it'll take 6 down to 12. Notably, this build that our opponent is playing doesn't appear to be one of the more dominant builds in the format. Although double Flesh Striker can deal a lot of damage very quickly. No surprises here, so we'll just play out our Master. And we will offer the trade with Hexcatcher. Our opponent does trade, and they sacrifice one of their spawn tokens as well. Down to 6. Next turn we'll be able to present lethal in the air. Myco Spawn cannot block our flying creatures. We'd love to see them tap out here, but not with a Kozilek's Return. This is backbreaking. We do draw the land for Svelin. Even without offering up the trade for Hexbreaker last turn, the Kozilek's Return would still wipe our board, because as soon as the Lord dies, then all of our other creatures get weaker. And that's going to be game over, unfortunately. Good game. Forgot to hit record on this one, so we are now on turn 2. We won the die roll again, started on the Wind Robber. Our opponent played an island, and they appear to be on a massive deck here. Here we'll play out the Mistbinder. Island Walk will be relevant in this match if we get it. Our opponent will not be able to block successfully here. So I think we just put our foot on the gas and try and close this one out quickly. Hexcatcher could present lethal if our opponent doesn't block our creatures. And that will be 12 damage. We take game 1. Not really seeing much from our opponent that game. We're just going to run back our main deck. These large decks also don't tend to sideboard, so our opponent will likely have the same cards as well. No adjustment to our strategy. This is fine. Our opponent is digging for something, or they just had a bad hand. They let us play first, which is a bit unusual. Here we can play out our Master of the Trident. Actually, we're going to put out the Hexcatcher, just in case our opponent has some instant sorcery spells that we do need to react to. It's unlikely to matter. Play another Lord. At any time, we can also give our creatures Island Walk, so trump blockers are not going to be a problem. We'll play out the Pearl Trident. Untap one of our lands. Play out the Herald. And our opponent concedes. We are now 3-1 going into match 5. We have won all 5 die rolls this league, just as any good player does. Make it look easy. This hand bridges into Collected Company. Well, we'll keep it. We're on another large deck here, so this might be another non-game. We'll turn the breeding pool into a tropical island so that we can play it without shocking ourselves. Black land from our opponent. We'll hit for 2. Then we can flash in Trickster at the end of our opponent's turn. Similar to last game, we're just going to try and deal as much damage as possible before our opponent has a chance to do anything. Hit for 3. Down to 15. We'll play out another Cavern here. Looks like our opponent doesn't have any response. So we'll grab the Reejerey, and then the other Lord that we're going to get will be the Mistbinder. Down to 7, lethal on board. And there's no board wipe from our opponent, so this should be game over. Same as last round, we won't do any sideboarding unless we get a better idea of what our opponent is playing. This hand is fine. We will likely turn our second scout into a tropical island, but it is dependent on our draw. And I think we'll actually turn the Herald into one, just in case we need to get a 4th land for Collected Company. We draw it naturally, so no need to transform anything. And then again, we will flash in the Trickster here without a target, and our opponent just concedes. All right, so there you have it. We went 4-1 in that league, and in the matches that we won, we went 8-0. Notably, the last 2 matches there against those massive decks where they never even really played a card don't really count, to showcase, the power level of this Merfolk deck. Overall, though, I think the deck did perform well. We were able to steal a game off of Eldrazi, and then we beat the Landfall deck and the Zombie deck in a pretty dominating manner. You probably do want to look at the sideboard a little bit and readjust to add some additional cards, especially consigned to memory, assuming you are going to be coming up against a good number of Eldrazi decks. The main deck, with a lot of lords, wants to aggressively pressure your opponent's life total. Notably, the sideboard games, you do tend to slow down a bit, and every creature that you end up swapping out for a spell does make Collected Company worse. Having the variety of evasive creatures, such as the Wind Robber and Miscloaked Herald, is a good way to close out the game after your opponent is able to gum up the board a bit, especially if they're able to get a large ground creature onto the battlefield. I think in these matches, we pretty much got to showcase all of the cards in the deck, with exception of Mutavault, which we never activated. It was a very enjoyable league to play, and this deck gets my seal of approval. As always, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe for more content.